back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. So we're continuing our conversation with Father Sebastiaan von Houten about vampires. But don't forget, Just Energy Radio is brought to you by SoulHealer.com and the Institute of Applied Energetics, www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. If you haven't purchased a copy of my new book, Man-Made, The Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods, it's now available at the webpage manmadethechronicles.com. Let's see, what else? And don't forget to sign up for our weekly newsletter, www.justenergyradio.com. Keep informed of the programming that's coming up. Sebastiaan, still there?
I'm here.
Yay. Very interesting conversation. This is you're opening up an entirely different world that I had no idea existed, and I think my listeners are appreciating your insights into a culture that is, well, obviously is not mainstream. It is even less mainstream than the culture that I'm traditionally in. But why follow the vampire culture? You know, you're talking about vampirism from a very spiritual perspective. You know, but there are a lot of other spiritual tradition. What makes this one different?
Well, like I said, I can only discuss living vampirism. I can't.
Right, and that's fine.
You know, the other traditions of vampirism are although I'm very familiar with them because I have to, you know, explain the differences and I have to be educated on them. And I'm not a part of the sanguinarian community or the psychic vampire community. That is far removed from the living vampire community. And the living vampire community is very much, we spell vampirism generally V-A-M-P-Y-R-E. That's how we distinguish ourselves. A lot of the other side of the community, the other vampire community, OBC, the blood drinker and psychic vampire community, really have their own little group. But what's funny is we're actually larger but more discreet than that group. They're more factious. They're from all over the place. And a lot of our members just don't want to be a part of that because what their idea of a vampire is this empowering spirit. Let me read some words to you. Vampire Virtues project that I did was very much about answering this question you're asking. So we look at vampirism as a philosophy. And when people think of vampires, they think of romantic dilettantes who are living forever. You know, you look at Lestat, and he's can fly and do all these magical things and lives forever and loves being who he is. The vampire, the true vampire with a Y, in my opinion, according to our tradition, is an opportunist in life. Not hurting anybody, but it's not just surviving. It's living. The vampire is addicted to life. We love to live. You know, I went fishing with a bunch of vampires. I've gone skiing. We have a vampire snowboard group where we all go snowboarding in Austria every January. You know, and we love life. Now, here's some words that can give you a description of kind of the inside scoop of vampire philosophy. Vampirism is a philosophy that uses the word vampire and pulls from the vampire mythology all the empowering aspects and brings them into your life and uses them as a tool for empowerment, enlightenment, and evolution. The mysteries are our traditions, our philosophies. What is a mystery? Very much like the Greek mysteries in ancient Egypt or the ancient Egyptian mysteries. The mysteries are basically the vampire mysteries. That's kind of our whole, it combines the philosophy and spirituality. Zephyr comes from the ancient Egyptian word kepher, which means to evolve, transform, or to become. And that is what we do. We seek to evolve beyond the average human state. We seek to become more than human, and we do that through our philosophy and our spirituality. We seek to find gnosis, which is not having faith, not believing in anything, but knowing divinity and finding that divinity within ourselves. The dragon is a metaphor for our higher self. It's a magical, primal, spiritual, metaphorical concept. It brings down to the reptilian brain inside of every human. We don't deny that. We accept that. And awakening a dragon is basically the process of Zephyr. We seek to have physical and spiritual immortality that is validatable and achievable. For real. I'm not talking crazy, people thinking that they're going to live forever. I'm talking, how do we really make it happen? And if we can't make it happen, how do we get the most out of life? How do we really live life? How do we distinguish between the BS and the reality, the fantasy and the truth? Transhumanism, the science of evolving the human body and mind. For example, we see aging as a curable disease. We actually see it as a disease that humans are suffering from, that we're genetically programmed. How do we defeat that through science? That would be a great, great epic thing. Apotheosis, the concept of self-deification. We are our own gods. There is nothing more important to a vampire than themselves. But that doesn't mean that they want to rule everyone else around them. They don't want to, apotheosis is the self-deification, which means that you put yourself before anybody else. For example, the old story, you got to love yourself before you love someone else. Glamour. Glamour is glamour is our outward projection of who we are. How we dress, our body language, our communication, how we interact with the world around us, and how we can control it. For example, we practice a lot of hypnosis, neuro-linguistic programming, body language. We do a lot of things such as routines and learning how to communicate, and social dynamics are very important elements of glamour. Libertine. Vampires love sex. But we're also very responsible and picky. Family. Vampires are extremely family-oriented. To be a family member of the vampire family is an honor. It's a privilege. It's incredible meeting other people of our lineage and our family. And when we get together, we have a blast. But we also respect. A lot of people call us a cult, and I laugh at that because, unlike a cult, we encourage people to absolutely build wonderful relationships with their birth families. I mean, I have an incredible relationship with my mom and my dad. They've read all my books. They're not vampires, but they support me incredibly well. I'm completely out of the coffin, open with my family, my brother, my sister. Everybody knows what I do. And they watch me on TV and they root me on. But they're not vampires. That's okay. And I encourage other vampires to have relationships with their birth family the same way. Very important to have a good relationship with your parents because you only get two of them. Nobility, the ability to be a noble individual, to rise up and be completely noble is a very empowering, very important element of the vampire community. The responsibility to be someone who's seeking to evolve. The true nobility is to treat people with respect and dignity. The vampire knight is our term for the male vampire. We encourage them to be knights, chivalrous and honorable and respecting women, and to be very self-empowered. The vampire knight learns how to cook. Our men are very, very important for a man to cook. How to do old school chivalry and hold the door for the woman, to know old traditions, how to play chess, how to play a musical instrument. The traditional things that you would think a knight would do is what we encourage men in our community to do, including learning martial arts. The witch, a vampire witch, is what we call our ladies. And I'm not talking a feminist here. I'm talking a real woman. A woman who understands what a man is and who understands to be a woman. And really, instead of trying to replicate male personality, realizes there's a root to being a woman. And if you look at women like Madonna, Lady Gaga, Margaret Thatcher, these women are incredibly empowered women, but they're still women. They're not trying to pretend they're men. And they're not over the top feminists hating men. They're women in modern society who, Oprah, I mean, she's a woman, and you don't see her going around, complaining about all the things that women can't do. She's a black woman. I mean, she's incredible. She's one of my role models. And a lot of the vampire witches in our clan are incredible women. They're dynamic. They're amazing. And, we don't make them say, oh, clean the house. And if a woman cooks for me, I'm going to cook for her the next day. You know, it's not this game where it's, you know, men and women are unequal. Then we also have willpower. We don't see things as, you know, a challenge. Everything in life is a challenge. And when you see it as a challenge and an opportunity to increase your vampiric will, that's a wonderful thing. Instead of feeling bad for yourself or negative or victimized, oh my God, there's this opportunity where I can climb this mountain and improve myself. Love and loyalty are important elements. Vampires are highly individualistic. And we're also very serious about what we are and focus on that. So those are basically the bottom lines that I'd like to kind of describe of what we see a vampire and the vampire mysteries as.
When you compare, not the psychic vampires, I think we talked about them enough, but the sanguinarian, did I say that right? Vampires, you know, other than the blood drinking part, which I'd like if you can talk about that here in a second, you know, do they have the same kind of core values in their group?
As individuals, maybe, but not as a community. Sabretooth and Sanguinarian, living vampires are a culture. It's a metaphysical and spiritual path. It's a philosophy. Sanguinarian vampirism is based on the need to drink blood. Okay, that's it. They might use some of our terminology or similar terminology, but their main focus is they have a need to drink blood, and everything about their vampirism surrounds that. And it varies from individual to individual.
So is that a very big community, or is it?
Yeah, there's lots of self-help webs. There's lots of sites and organizations for helping them support.
Not drink blood?
To drink blood.
Oh, okay.
I don't really see in the sanguinarian community many people going, oh, I don't want to do this. Everybody's talking about how they can do it safely and consensually. However, the disadvantages I think, outweigh the advantages. And, you know, I mean, for us, if we're immortal, okay, and if we achieve an immortal ascendance of keeping our consciousness together after death, okay, which means between the first and second death, not letting to the oblivion of being recycled, which we call the dream matrix, which is the Akashic records, basically. We avoid reincarnation in this tradition. The living vampires do not believe in reincarnation as the same way that humans do. We try to stop it. Well, blood drinking vampires, you know, it depends. They have so many different. There's no real culture to it. There's no real music or art or philosophy or reason or whatever to being a sanguine vampire. It's just about blood drinking and the need around that.
So other than the people that had that disease that you mentioned, that I don't remember the word, do people have a need to drink blood, or is this just because they think they want to? Or I mean, I don't really understand the psychology and the mentality about making that choice. Well,
I agree with you. I was a blood drinker for 7 years, but I was married. You know, I mean, I'm one person to focus on, and
so that was like safe blood drinking, kind of like safe sex, but.
You know, HIV can sleep dormant in your body. It can still be contagious for 10 years until it shows up in a test. Okay? In my opinion, that's too risky. You know, when I was drinking blood, I was in my late teens and early 20s. And I'll tell you, it's a kinky rush. I can't deny that. It's very erotic. It's you know, between a couple. I mean, when I was a kid, I did the Tonto and Lone Ranger thing with my best friend. I cut my hand with a knife, and he cut his hand with a knife, and we became blood brothers. I mean, that was what you did before you learned about hepatitis and HIV and things. You know, and usually 2 little 8-year-old boys are not going to have syphilis, hepatitis, or HIV. I mean, you know, but when you get to it, it becomes sexually active and you get older, you know, condom breaks, you sit on the toilet, you just live longer so you have more liability. I'm not going to put myself at risk anymore. I'm really lucky. And in fact, I know a secret vampire group of living vampires who got it. Here's the problem. They get into the vampire scene. there's so many different information sources that they don't have a solid basis of a positive role model. And they get into the community and they think that the only way to be in the vampire community is to drink blood or be a psychic vampire. And that's, in my opinion, very limiting and very negative. And they keep saying, oh, we're so sad, we're so miserable, blah, blah. And these people are like turned off. So recently, with the psychic vampire in the blood drinking community has gotten so big, the media goes to them and says, oh, wow, you're the real vampires. And these people they don't say, oh, there's other types of vampires, like I'm saying. I'm saying, look, there's these other types of people that do this. And I acknowledge what they do. I just think that I don't like to be perceived as a negative entity for drinking and for being a vampire or practicing vampirism. I don't see it as a negative thing in the perspective with the way that I practice it. So blood drinkers there is no scientific or psychological evidence that people need to do this. So they believe they need to do this, and they've created a community around the belief of that need.
So my husband, because we were getting into this whole conversation about, the safety of drinking blood and this and that, and he goes, well, those people just, consume donated blood. And I was like, I don't think so. Do people actually partake in donated blood? I mean, I can understand, not maybe on a personal level, about the intimacy, about, suckling the blood from somebody. I mean, I could, on some level get that part, but you really lose the intimacy if you have a blood donation bag that you're suckling.
I've never heard of that.
Well, you see it on TV,
There was a really cool movie called Midnight Sun about a guy that was, he was a blood drinker, and he did that. But, I've never seen someone go to a blood bank and get blood. It's always been from consensual donors. And of all the sanguinarian vampires that I've met, I've only met one, maybe two, that, in my opinion, are, like, impressive in regards to, like, blow my mind.
What do you mean? How did they impress you?
Well, when you meet a living vampire, you're going to meet an interesting person to have an incredible conversation with. You're going to get something from knowing them. You're going to want to be around them. You're going to meet them and you're going to be, wow, they're on fire, they're alive, they're amazing, they're a musician, they're an artist, they know philosophy and art and culture. I have a very good friend she's from North Africa, and she's a living vampire. And she's a professional belly dancer, and she's a surfer, and she's into historical costuming, and she's an opera singer. I mean, she's incredible. And then I meet someone who's a psychic vampire, and they're like, oh, I'm so sad, I need to do this, and and they're just a victim for everything. And
I have to go to work today.
Wake up and go, what are we going to do at work that's going to be interesting today? How are we going to go out and take over the world and find my immortality? How am I going to challenge myself and improve myself? What new language can I learn today? What museum can I go to? What new adventure will today bring? And a psychic vampire and a living vampire are complete opposites of each other.
So do the blood-drinking vampire, do they fall somewhere in the middle, or are they really just a category unto themselves?
Okay. I mean, there's ones that call themselves hybrids, which they think they feed off energy and blood. I mean, blood does have energy in it. But here's a couple problems. First of all, you got to hurt someone to get it by opening their skin. Okay. There's no medical benefit to it scientifically. It's extremely dangerous health-wise. It could possibly be considered assault or illegal because only legal medical practitioners should legally be able to open your body, unless you're diabetic and you need to take some blood to test yourself, with an insulin injection. It's highly, human blood is dirty. I mean, it's not a clean stuff. I mean, what if you get into a vein or an artery? You're getting, it's like drinking sewage. If you get the wrong, you hit the wrong vein or artery. You're potentially doing a criminal act by assaulting someone, because opening someone's skin is assault. You got to be properly educated on it. Now, is it something that is very intimate for people to do? Yeah, it's one of the most intimate acts you could ever have, and I consider it highly sacred. If you're married to someone and you want to bond with them on a physical level, just like you do with the Tonto and the Lone Ranger, but on a more mature adult level, that's one thing. But to drink blood because you need to drink blood, there's no proof for that. And I've met people. I have very good friends who are blood drinkers, but I'm one of the most educated people on the vampire subject in the world, and I don't do it. And it comes down to it. I hate to tell people this, but it's a fetish, and they deny it. They say there's no sexual arousal out of it. And I'm like, you guys crazy? Of course there's a sexual arousal out of it. It's taboo. It's a fetish. And if you disagree with me, that's fine. I completely am cool with that. And I'm not trying to attack them, but I'm just trying to call them out and say, look, here's, this is kind of what it is.
But they like it, so. And they get people that are interested and willing to participate with them, so it's, to me, it's a consensual act, not one that I would necessarily participate in, but consensual. It's kind of like the whole BDSM scene, like, I don't know that I would want to be tied up and beaten, or be the one tying somebody up and beating them, but, there are people that get off on it and it works for them, and there's the whole lifestyle and culture that goes along with that. We
have to also understand that, a lot of living vampires and a lot of sanguinarian vampires are highly involved in the fetish community. In fact, in my opinion, the fetish community is the best place for the BDSM side of the fetish community is one of the best places for a blood drinker to go, because they're all about safety, consensuality, and education and knowledge, and there's a good resource of people there. And most of the blood drinking vampires I met are in the BDSM scene, and it's a fetish for them. And the practicality of the movements like the Jugendspiegel Society and Dom Some Friends in New York and all these education groups, they have seminars and classes like the Black Rose Society in D.C. I went to this whole convention, and there was a doctor showing people how to do this safely and saying, here's the real problems with blood drinking, here's how to avoid them, and unfortunately there's a very small window of safety for this. So, but people do, if they do it sanely and consensually, and they use the psychology of it as a fetish, they're in a better position to be safe with education. But the one thing that I really find really sad about people thinking that all fetishes are about pain or giving pain. It's not necessarily about that. S&M and BDSM is about power exchange and the ability to exchange power, someone giving up power. Like when I do BDSM, it's not about pain and torture, unless my submissive partner wants to do that. It's more about sensuality and experience and feathers and scent and massage and spiritual environments with music and taking that person on a journey. I don't like the pain stuff. I don't find it very attractive. And most vampires see it like that. Most living vampires love what people would consider kinky to the normal world is normal sex to us.
Yeah, but even and I hear what you're saying about the movement of power and the power play between the two individuals, but that only again encompasses a segment of that community, where there are other people. I have this one friend who, his comment is, well, I really like a good beating every so often. Like, okay. Not me, but okay.
What's also very interesting is we do have that, but not all vampires are into that. A lot of vampires look at me like, what do you mean you're going to beat each other? I'm like, dude, if two guys want to get together, like heterosexual men in the vampire community play S&M together. because it's a manly thing to do, and we're not scared of the gender ramifications. We want to identify with the vampire archetype and what it means to us as this empowering archetype and awakening our dragons, and de-identify from what humans do, and which is, you look at the hypocrisy of human culture. You look at, we don't want to play video games all day. We want to be in a museum. Okay? We don't want to just play, one American football. We want to learn about rugby and cricket. Okay? We want to learn how to ride horses, and we want to learn how to fly planes, and we're energy junkies. We want to jump out of a plane. We want to go and, row on the Seine River and then go backpacking in the mountains. And that's also a big differentiation between us and goths. Is goths are usually like, oh my God, sports. How can we do sports? I don't want to do sports. And most vampires are turned off by sports. Well, vampires embrace sports. Sports are challenges. I know a really good friend of mine who's a vampire, and she's a boxer. She kicks ass, man. I know. When you go to a vampire private meeting, like we have 2 big meetings in Europe a year, we have for our clan, and you have to be invited. We're going to have a class on meditation, then we're going to have a class on yoga, then we're going to have a discussion on individuality, then we're going to have a lecture on vampirism, then we're going to have a cooking class on how to make, really great French cuisine, and then the next day is Norwegian cuisine, and then we're going to have every morning a Krav Maga class of an Israeli martial art on how to defend yourself, and then we're going to have a survival course on what happens if the power goes out and the whole grid falls apart and you need to survive and get out of a city. And then we're going to do an energy yoga class and an energy workshop. This is what we do.
But it sounds like what your group is doing is using your energy and teaching yourself how to utilize your personal energy to its fullest potential. One of the things that I see in individuals that have that kind of mentality is there's an awakeness, an awareness of them as spirit, and this desire to learn and grow and experience and not just become a couch potato.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. We're absolutely, really, really, really excited to live. I just can't tell you how happy I am. It's like every challenge that I've had in my life has been an opportunity for me to evolve. And when you get in, and that's the vampire spirit, in my opinion.
But that's also a choice to look at life a little bit different, as opposed to, oh, this happened to me, I'm the victim. It's like, okay, here's a challenge being placed in front of me. How do I overcome? Correct.
But that any philosophy is a combination of ideas that have a common basis. Philosophy is the quest for wisdom. And this quest is really important. So what I really think is important, in my opinion, is I don't care what other people say or think about me. I just care that they spell my name properly. And in the end of the day, when people can find out about that and realize what we do, we're not negative. We're not evil. We're not trying to, harm anyone. But we do feed.
Okay, so what do you feed on? Is it feed on the things around you, the things you can participate in, learn about, or is there a different kind of feeding, not blood, not energy, that you guys feed off of?
We feed off vital life force, just like anybody would expect a vampire to do. And it's there. We take it and we harness it. But you also have to understand that, our ethics behind it are very evolved. The first thing is that humans radiate energy. They're batteries. If you look at the movie The Matrix, a human will radiate this energy that's around them. And there's a certain point where that energy becomes external to their body. We've divided feeding into 2 categories, surface and deep. Deep feeding is when you go into someone's chakra and you violate their self and you take that energy out of them. Okay? Then there's surface feeding, which is basically we've divided into several different frequencies of energy. Now, everything in the universe has energy. Okay? You have energy for example. Like,
hey, then you're on the right show.
And I was just saying, the intro to your show was like, I'm like, wow, this girl's going to know exactly what I'm talking about. I like this place. And what it is human energy, human frequency. As far as we know and can prove in the tangible scientific world, or even in the philosophical world, as far as we know, the human is the most evolved entity that exists, that we can prove. I mean, there's theory and there's thing, but in our common agreement of what is reality and what you can find on Wikipedia and an encyclopedia is that the human is the most evolved, complex thing that exists. And it's still a mysterious entity to us. The brain and how we evolved, we still don't have all the answers. But life force, vital life force, chi, prana, ki, whatever you choose to call it, is what all living things radiate. But humans radiate a very high frequency and a very potent energy. And part of achieving immortality and the practice of vampirism in our perspective is that when the human body generates a certain frequency of prana, and when the human body dies, it stops generating that. And therefore, the soul is released, and all of those memories and dreams go into the great collective. The soul moves on. But the structure of that person's personality evaporates, just like the physical body decomposing. And that's the second death. So we have to look at the first death and second death. What the vampire seeks to do is preserve the self and learn how to feed off that excess life force that humans radiate, so they have a source of it after their physical body dies, and they're able to continue their existence in a disembodied spiritual state, fully aware of who they are.
But wouldn't that make them kind of ghost-like?
Absolutely. We call them undead because they're in between the first death and the second death.
Oh, I know a lot of those guys.
And they have just as many personalities as humans or any other spiritual entity. But they were former humans that are now disembodied, and they live off life force of other human beings, and that is vampiric. However, the difference is the ethical structure that it's based on. It's not like a psychic vampire. It's very different. Because...
No, I mean, usually there's some kind of an agreement that happens.
Well, there's also 7 billion human beings on the planet. There's plenty of energy that's being radiated. 7 billion humans generate a lot of excess energy, just like we generate heat. They always say the temperature of a city goes up high. You go into a room, with 30, 40 people, the temperature of the room is going to get higher. It's the same thing with life force. And in fact, when we talk about the halo or the aura, just as a human, human is a prana machine. They're a life force machine, just like any living being. When you talk about Yoda talks about the force, it generates all life. It connects us, it binds us. It's, that is prana. That's life force. The earth is a plentiful environment with 7 billion humans. One person goes to me, oh, you just feed off humans and you violate them and everything. And I go, are you crazy? There's 7 billion humans. Do you know how much extra prana there is in Paris with 12 million people?
But my belief is that we send and receive energy from people all the time. And whether you're a vampire doing it intentionally or just anybody, there still is this dynamic that is constantly happening, period.
Yes. Well, the exchange of energy is always there. But what vampirism does is set you up first with a philosophy and then a process of surviving the conscious and achieving. The goal is immortality.
But why would you want to hang out in that kind of neither world?
Not a neither world. There's so many options once you get there. First, you have eternity to develop yourself. The second thing you have is the ability to time and space are a whole different experience from that perspective. We all know that.
Yeah, I like that part.
Okay. I mean, I don't like to call it, from a human perspective, it's immortality. From a vampire's perspective, it's becoming timeless, escaping the cycle of time and space, and to be anywhere you want. I mean, think of it. One of the other elders in my clan was telling me the other day that we were, where were we? We were in the Metropolitan Museum of Art a couple of years ago. We were having a conversation, and he said that it was very interesting because, you know, you look at the Egyptian religion, and the entire Egyptian religion was based on vampirism. It is a vampiric religion. Same thing with Sumerians. There's no greater example of vampirism in history than Egyptian mythology. It's about surviving death and becoming immortal, and having humans worship a divine person and feeding life force to that person. And that's why the pharaohs would have the Ankh. The Ankh meant immortality in life, and the pharaoh would sit on the throne, and only gods and the pharaoh could have the Ankh, while everybody else worked towards feeding them energy. If you go to any church, you know, you can, if you want to get controversial, you can think of all gods as vampires, because they can't exist without the life force. And they all talk about immortality. Join me and live forever.
Well, that's a whole totally different conversation. I mean, that's, you know, I find it interesting because when you look at mythology and the gods aren't being, quote unquote, venerated and worshipped, a.k.a. you aren't giving them energy, or at least, you know, the gods of antiquity, then they'd come and pretty much wipe you off the planet.
Correct. However, you know, look at Islam. The very word means to submit to God, to the will of God. You know, to be submissive, to be passive to that. And you look at all these people pushing life force to Mecca every day, 5 times a day. You cannot say that's not vampiric.
So are you trying to say that God's a giant vampire in the sky?
I don't think there's a giant vampire in the sky.
Well, it just makes you wonder, you know, I've never really thought about it from this perspective, where all that energy is going. You know, if we're sending it, where is it going, and is there a recipient?
That's exactly. Well, you know, it's also, you can also say something really beautiful about religion, is that religion is an agreement. People believe in it. You know, when you believe, like a vampire believes in nothing because they need to receive belief from others. That's why the vampires glamour people. And in fact, True Blood actually took the word glamour from my clan. They quote our literature right on the TV show in several points. They also copy some other vampire groups.
And I'm sure they didn't give you any credit.
Oh, of course not. And then people ask me why I don't sue them, and it's because I'm like, well, I have better things to do. I think I'd like to go, you know, one thing vampires have is they're, like, for example, money. We laugh because it's called currency. That's another word for energy for us. People go to me and they go, Sebastiaan, you could be so rich with what you do. You could start a whole cult. You could make all this money off of it and everything like that. And I go, guys, I have more than you can imagine. I live in Paris. I live in a really modest house. Okay, I make enough money for me to live, but I'm not consumed by money. Money is not my goal. To have the experiences that money brings is the goal. You know, to be able to be secure in life and to be able to go to the supermarket when I want, or go out to dinner with my friends when I choose to, or take a trip to New York to see my parents. Okay, I want those freedoms. Money is the vehicle to get me there. I'm not after the money. I'm after the freedom.
Cool. We have about 15 minutes left. And one topic that I want to go into is, can anyone be a vampire?
That's a very good question. And there is a big, big debate on that.
Well, and that's why I was like, okay, we got 15 minutes. I think we can cover some of it.
I think the first prerequisite to being a dayside vampire, sure. Anybody can practice the philosophy. If they agree with it, it really settles within them. But I think you need psychic potential to become a nightside vampire. You need to be able to open up your mind and be able to experience psychic ability and be able to manipulate energy. You have to be an energy sensitive to do that. And I do believe that anybody can achieve that. However, it depends on the individual and what their potential is. Some people have greater potential for things than others. You know, for example, some people might be able to write a really wonderful essay and be a very talented writer. Well, another person might be a very good, basketball player. So it really depends on the individual. And what also, if you're talking about the type of vampirism that I am, are they able to put the work in? Are they able to put the effort? I mean, it's not an easy life. It's a challenging dynamic and very, you got to have a lust for life. You got to be very excited. You got to be very, have a strong will. You have to have a strong desire for immortality, and you got to be ready to do it. And not everybody has the endurance for immortality.
But it's kind of that way with really any spiritual tradition that you follow. There are a set of rules and precepts that, if you're a conservative Jew, you have all these prayers you have to say and certain foods you can eat or not eat or, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you're a Muslim, you are, praying to Mecca 5 times a day. If you're following a more Eastern spiritual tradition, there's the whole meditation and yoga and, stuff that they do, and it becomes a practice, which means you have to practice it.
Yeah, sure. It takes discipline and dedication and effort, just like any discipline or tradition. So that's absolutely a true reality.
So I'm taking it that someone just couldn't come to you and say, hey, give me a set of fangs and boom, I'm a vampire, because they were some gothy person that thinks that getting some fangs would be cool.
Well, we divide it into circles in the Sanguinarium and Sabretooth. Okay, we consider white circle the people that just get the fangs and they just love the fangs and they just want to wear the fangs. Okay. And then there's people, we have red circle, and red circle are people who are really, this is a philosophy for them. They've moved from the white circle to the red circle. This is really a philosophy that they have personally testified and validated that is theirs, and they understand what it is. They know how to dress. They know how to care for themselves. They know what vampirism in our philosophy means. They have a very strong idea of it, and they're dedicated to it as their personal path in life. Well, white circle members are mainly black swans. They're just, they want to hang out, they want to wear the fangs, they want to be a part of it, but it's not really them fully. Like, some guy that comes into a Halloween store on Halloween and just wants to get fangs for Halloween will get a pair of fangs. And we may never see him again. But he might come back for Valentine's Day, because traditionally in New York, the way we built the vampire scene in New York was we would have, everybody would get their fangs and stuff on Halloween, and we wouldn't really throw a Halloween party. We'd throw a Valentine's Day party because we'd have everybody on our mailing list. And they already have the fangs and the costume. Why not come for the Valentine's party? And then they'll be really into the vampire scene. They'll go to a real proper vampire event.
So to go to one of your events, do you have to have the fangs and the whole? I'm curious about this how to dress part too. What does that mean?
Costume, masks, and fangs are incredible tools of psychodrama and enlightenment. Like, fangs don't make you a vampire, but fangs can trigger, if you already have the potential, all these desires to open up. Basically what had happened was, it's really simple. I've been making fangs for 20 years. And I noticed that there was all these common personality traits between all my clients. And so I just basically observed and interacted with them and realized that there was something there. And that's where living vampirism came from, in my opinion. Okay? And I mixed in with other traditions as well. I'd make fangs for members from the Temple of the Vampire, and they would tell me certain things, and I thought that would be great, and it became a part of our culture. Our clan culture is very interesting. Our clan culture is really, truly our vampire current, Sabretooth current, is completely alive at a vampire ball. It's a ritual. It's a ceremony. There's our guests. It's the enthusiasm of people getting their costumes together. People say that the vampire ball, TripAdvisor called our vampire balls the #1 Halloween party in the world for 2 years in a row.
But it sounds like if it's on TripAdvisor that anybody could participate in the event.
Absolutely, but you got to get past our gatekeeper. You buy a ticket. There's terms of sale, and you show up in blue jeans and a T-shirt. No way, you're not getting in. Your ticket is invalid. There's rules of entry, and the first rule of entry is dress code. The second rule of entry is you got to be a legal adult. We don't allow minors in our parties, depending on the venue. Some are 18, some are 21. Like New York, our events in New York are 21, while in Prague you can be 16 because you can drink beer at 16. So it really depends on the city where we're at. Anybody can come. Everybody's welcome, but you got to have an open mind. And usually if you're not into it, you won't last very long and you'll walk out because you just won't be vibing with it. But a lot of people will come and they'll go for the first time and they'll be addicted. It's incredible how addicted people get to these events because the Endless Night events are so unique because there are outer circle public events. We have the outer circle means that anybody can attend as long as they pass the rules of the door, which are 21 and over, and you got to be in dress code. And we have an entire section on our website describing what the dress code is.
It sounds like going to see a Grateful Dead concert, Either you love it or you hate it. And, and you have to wear your tie-dye T-shirt and jeans.
Sure.
All right, they don't have that kind of dress code. It just ends up that way.
True. But if you go to a goth party, you're going to feel out of place if you're not dressed as a goth. If you go to the Burning Man, you're going to, when you go to Burning Man, there's rules of entry. Out in the Nevada desert. You got to go with these 7 rules. There's no spectators. You got to be radically self-reliant. You got to bring your own supplies. You got to, gifting is an important thing. There is a culture to our outer circle events. And when you go to an event, you come through the door and you enter into the gates of the Sanguinarium community. You come into our clan territory, and people. We have celebrities there. We have women there. If, like, for example, inside of our party, if a gentleman grabs a girl's butt, he will be immediately removed without question, unless it's his girlfriend. But if he does it, you don't find old men groping young women. You don't find men treating women like the thing. In fact, 60% of our culture is female. There's a greater number of women in our clan than there are men. 60 to 65%. And of the straight men, most of them are gay. I wouldn't say most, but a good proportion of them are gay. So basically, you go to the Playboy Mansion, you act in a certain way. There's a certain culture to that. And it's the same thing with our events. Our events are basically very similar to going to an event with Hugh Hefner. There's a bunch of beautiful women with open sexuality, but there's certain rules you play, and if you don't behave in a certain way, you're out the door. And we're not a strip club, and we're not a swingers club. We are our own thing, and that's the Endless Night events. And we have different types of events. So if you want to go to the masked ball, then you have that. Then we have more libertine parties we have a pool party, which is pretty cool. Very much like going to the Playboy Mansion. Beautiful women, very cool dressed guys, rock stars. Everybody's a rock star when they come in our door. You got to be a lady or gentleman when you enter the Endless Night gates.
Well, what if you're a woman and you're not a beautiful woman? What if you're,
I think that every woman has the potential to be beautiful.
Got it.
Okay, I don't think, I have a very good friend of mine who's would be considered obese by certain standards, okay, to be very frank. But that girl can dress better than anybody I've ever met in my life. And she looks gorgeous, and she rocks it out. And, she knows what compliments her, and she knows how to look good. And do I consider her ugly? No, I consider her a goddess, and I respect her for that. Because she knows how to carry herself. It doesn't matter how big or small or ugly or the thing you are by society standards. In Endless Night, it's a costume party. You can make yourself look amazing. That costume that you create has to project what's really, truly inside you. And she's gorgeous.
Well, and I hear what you're saying because, when people, really stop and take care of themselves, and put the energy into themselves, they project that kind of energy.
Absolutely.
So I hear what you're saying. I like it.
Well, that's what we're about. Sabertooth's about life, and we're living, man. I'll tell you. And the people that are in our clan are, you would be blown away. I mean, we have celebrities that are members. We have, and we're very confidential with our membership. We don't go brag that the only celebrity that I've ever bragged about was one that asked me to. And that's Ashley Greene from Twilight, because she hated the fact she couldn't wear fangs in the movie. Twilight don't have fangs, and she was all excited. And like when she saw me at a horror convention, she begged me to make her fangs because she had to sign a contract by Stephanie Meyers that her vampires wouldn't have fangs. When she saw that, she said she took the role initially because she wanted fangs.
And no fangs.
Thank you.
So we have 3 minutes left. If somebody wanted to get more information about your different events, or if they wanted to get information about getting a set of fangs made because maybe they want to be a black swan or have a big Halloween party coming up next year, where would they go to get, to find that kind of stuff out?
Well, I would say the main resource that we present, the public resource, is, of course, my personal website, Father Sebastiaan. But we have an online magazine which brings everything together. It's called Vampyre Almanac. You have private forums. You have public forums. You have articles. We're going to be interviewing a bunch of pickup artists in a couple weeks about how they use their pickup artist and how that can relate to vampire glamour. We're doing things on fashion and art. We have check out our Vampire Girl section, because it's not suicide girls. These are really elegant, amazing ladies who, in my opinion, blow playmates out of the water. We have articles on culinary delights. We have spiritual things. We have information on immortality and how to really physically research that. And most of all, we have an incredible community of dynamic and amazing people from around the world who are one family that is I'm just beyond honored to be a part of. And wow. Is the place to go.
Okay, well, that was very fast. And your book, Vampire Virtues, I know that's available on your website. Do you have any other books that you've written?
There's Vampyre Almanac 2013, which is a collection of essays by members of our community that's coming out in January. I co-wrote a book called The Purple Veils, which is the sequel to Vampire Virtues. The Red Veils, which is about spirituality, because Red Veils is only about philosophy. Purple Veils is about spirituality. And if you want to get really, really deep into the night side of vampirism, you can check out my book, Sanguinomicon, which means Book of the Laws of the Blood. And that is published by Wiser Books, and you can get that at any major bookstore.
You're in Paris. Do you come to the U.S. much and work in the U.S. much?
I'm probably in the U.S. 3 to 4 months a year, touring, doing lectures. In February, I'll be at the Everhart Museum in Scranton, Pennsylvania, doing a vampire ball and a lecture. And they're actually putting my fang kit and my ritual altar inside of the museum in a display.
Cool. Well, I'm going to have to kind of keep my eye out for where you're going to be. Maybe we can hook up at some event and hang out. That would be really fun.
Well, next Halloween, I hope you come down to New Orleans, because we're going to be at the House of Blues every Halloween weekend. You can check out all that information on vampirealmanac.com. And we have over 1,000 really amazingly dressed people that are really cool. But make sure you know the dress code before you even try to come or buy a ticket, because if I will get crucified by the guests if they see someone in blue jeans and a T-shirt in there.
Dress, I can do. And New Orleans, it's like our favorite place to go.
Sure. New Orleans is a pilgrimage for vampires every year. And Endless Night is just an incredible event. And it comes from the William Blake quote: "Some are born to endless nights, others are born to some are born to sweet delight, others are born to endless night." Ages of Innocence.
Cool.
Just like the Doors of Perception for the Doors. I'm a big Jim Morrison fan.
Well, and they have gumbo in New Orleans. That's we're big gumbo fans.
There's no place like this. There was no event like that.
Anyway, well, there's the music, which means we have to go. So, Sebastiaan, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom. This was so educational for me, and there's not that much these days that I just learned so much. So thank you. Well, I think I might have lost him. I'm not hearing him responding, so I'll just keep going. Next week, we have Mike Barra coming on talking about ancient aliens on the moon. So until next week, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. Be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio. Point your browser to www.justenergyradio.com for more show information and to contact Dr. Rita. Until next time, remember, it's all just energy.